Hello everyone, my name is Evan and I like to make stop-motion dinosaurs and monsters. And now that Kaiju Biollante is done, it's time to rebirth some Jurassic World fun. So one could say the Mutant D-Rex is now on the way. On this Mutant Dinosaur project today, we'll be making this monstrosity skeleton, I say. And as I create this movie monster today, we'll be splicing away at the DNA of some Jurassic World lore, I do say. So I'm sure many of you are already aware, the first trailer for Jurassic World Rebirth has recently come out. And we got one look at one seriously messed up looking monster that seems to be stomping around in the new movie. And there's actually a lot of different ways this monstrosity could tie into the film's plot. And there's also a lot of very old Jurassic Park material that I'm pretty sure they took some inspiration from. And personally, I think showing this thing off in the first trailer might have not been the best idea. With that being said, I'll probably do a video in the future where I will review and go over the trailer in more depth. Now, with this video, I just want to go into the details surrounding this monster that people seem to be dubbing the D-Rex, which borderline sounds inappropriate. I will also be talking about some theories on what this all could exactly mean for the upcoming Jurassic World Rebirth movie. So one of the things that makes this new creature so creepy and weird, and I think a lot of that has to do with its, well, overall design. The face is extremely eerie and disproportional compared to any other weird clone that we have seen so far. And it looked like it started life off with a Tyrannosaurus skull that kind of became smushed like a bulldog or a pug. Rest in peace, Foo. The mouth has a bunch of small, very jagged teeth. That means it's got to be eating something or someone on the island because it's clearly carnivorous. And I could imagine something like a Parasaurolophus or some other herbivore happens to stumble across this monster. This mutant animal would most likely just grab it with its massive arms and start attacking it immediately because I honestly don't see this thing being very fast. For example, I don't think it could necessarily charge down and hunt prey like a Tyrannosaur could. One thing that I definitely think we should take note of is that we only see this monster at night in the trailer, so that means it could possibly be nocturnal. And that could be a good strategy on how it catches its prey, because I'm pretty confident if this thing went up against a normal T-Rex, I'm not so sure it would win in any fight. It looks more like a freak of nature from Chernobyl than necessarily a well-adapted dinosaur like we have seen in the past. With that being said, those arms do look fairly formidable. Oh, and by the way, the D-Rex looks like it may have 6 limbs, which I will make later on in the video, because in the trailer you can vaguely see some weird-looking Tyrannosaurus arms at the front, but it actually looks like it uses its front legs, or arms, whatever you want to categorize those massive limbs as, to help support its own body weight. Now, these gorilla-looking arms actually look like they were supposed to be feet for the animal originally, but something along the way got really from the past and injecting them into this newer film. So if this place is Site C, that means this place is literally just a weird base of operations for failed experiments, and it's kind of where they do prototypes of the dinosaurs before sending the information to Isla Sorna so they can make official finalized versions of the dinosaurs. I have seen some theories about that idea after people have seen the trailer. Now, my personal other theory is that, well, no. This is just the original location they started making the animals. But sometime in the past, maybe a long time ago, the D-Rex broke out and killed a bunch of people, which caused them to abandon the facility and move everything over to Site B. But in order for that to work, I think you need to convince the audience that this is something that's not just adding new layers of complexity to the lore. And I also think it's kind of unnecessary to continue to create new islands before we start getting through basically all the numbers of the alphabet. Let's just really think about that for a minute before we fully commit to it, because at that point it's just never going to exactly end. Oh, and by the way, as far as what this creature is, I think the D-Rex is just supposed to be a Tyrannosaurus. I know some people are saying it's a human dinosaur hybrid, or even maybe a basic hybrid dinosaur like the Indominus Rex, but I don't think I'm quite convinced just yet. One theory that I personally really like, that this is the mosquito DNA from the amber getting accidentally spliced together with the Tyrannosaurus blood, and due to the fact that it has 6 limbs, that would truly be an odd concept that I'd be willing to buy into. But unfortunately, I think this is kinda just supposed to be a very messed up Tyrannosaur that Hammond abandoned on the island after it killed a bunch of scientists. Now, if that's not what happened, maybe this is a brand new island that InGen has recuperated and started cloning new stuff again. And then the D-Rex got out like 5 years ago and just started killing everybody. That is probably the most believable scenario, unfortunately. Now, if you take a close look at the embryonic lab, there's a bunch of messed up stuff in glass tanks. There's a velociraptor with 2 heads, for example, and some of the little dinosaur creatures are all messed up and imperfected, which again could mean that it's just an old InGen Jurassic Park facility. It does tie into things like from Jurassic Park 3, because we saw similar embryonic specimens briefly in that movie as well. Of course, this also could be a test run for the Indominus Rex like some people think, but something tells me they just want to move away from all the stuff in Jurassic World. So obviously I don't really know at this point, and we'll probably have to wait till the movie comes out for more, and or a second trailer. Now, the Spinosaurus in Jurassic Park 3 is radically different than the one we see in this trailer. So if they're trying to imply that Dr. Wu made that animal in JP3 and the others in Jurassic Park more akin to what Jurassic Park visitors would like after having genuinely made accurate clones at the beginning, that would be very interesting and is something that actually Michael Crichton talked about in the novel. But then again, I really wonder how this other facility ties into the other movies, because right now I'm not sure if I entirely believe this place existed before the Lost World's Isla Sorna, but maybe there is a bit more to the story, because there is some theories floating around that this island could have been just Site B from the Lost World, but I think they changed that for some odd reason, and unfortunately that is probably what most likely happened, because one of the ideas they had for Jurassic Park 2 originally was for the ending of that movie to have the camouflaging dinosaurs from Michael Crichton's book, or a weird mutant freak that Steven Spielberg said was more monster and xenomorph-like from Alien than a dinosaur. This animal was called the Super Raptor, and it was cut from the film before being replaced with pteranodons attacking the worker village, then finally swapping that out with the T-Rex going to San Diego. So yeah, I think David Kapp is digging way back into the files of Jurassic Park and World to make this new monster a reality. But what does that mean for the people on the island, and how these creatures have been surviving so long? And in all honesty, I don't really have a good answer for that question. Now, we do know that the lysine contingency never really worked, but well, wherever this takes place in the timeline, all we know is that the D-Rex killed some scientists, then got out on the island and has been surviving for some long time. Now, I do think the creature is mainly going to be seen at night, and I know this may sound morbid, but hopefully it actually attacks some people. Because if I'm to be honest, I'm kinda tired of the whole dinosaurs not attacking people thing, which is particularly bad in the Jurassic World movies. For example, in the last film, the Giganotosaurus, all it did was eat a dead deer. That's it. I mean, if you're gonna build up a giant mutant monstrous animal, you gotta have it attack people. I mean, right? I hope. So there is definitely a lot of potential here, and I'll admit, I do kind of have mixed feelings about the D-Rex, but it is slightly growing on me at this point. Which, in all honesty, is one of the things that made me sort of conflicted about the whole trailer, because visually, everything looked really cool, and then the D-Rex is just kind of a, well, I don't know about you, not a huge fan of the whole hybrid mutant thing, but we'll see how this pulls off. Cause I'll admit, it is a far better concept than the Doomsday Rex, which yes, was a real concept. It was a two-headed T-Rex from a abandoned Lost World animated series. Like I said before, I have a feeling they're really digging back into the archives for this movie. Now, I'll admit, as soon as the trailer came out, I started immediately to check to see what other people thought of the monster. I was kind of surprised to see how many movie YouTubers I usually get info on really actually enjoy it and quite like the thing. I mean, they loved it. I mean, I do kind of get it. Now, I'll admit, I was expecting something a little less weird than what they actually decided to go with. My biggest concern with the trailer overall, though, the way it was more proudly showing off the basic jokes, that just seemed a bit too modern-day 2010s Hollywood. That definitely made me temper my expectations a lot. I don't think it'll be worse than Jurassic World Dominion or nearly as much of a mess as Jurassic Park 3. Either way, I'm really looking forward to perhaps squeezing out some more dinosaur content before, well, Jurassic World Rebirth comes out. Now, this movie has a lot resting on its shoulders, but hopefully it will be a home run. But this D-Rex monster is definitely the most controversial thing in the trailer. And I know for a fact it is something that is gathering a lot of attention. It most certainly caught my eye, but let me know what you think of the D-Rex in the comment section below. What are your thoughts and opinions on how it will be represented in the Jurassic World Rebirth movie? And what do you think about the movie in general? Is this going to tie in well with the Lost World Jurassic Park and Jurassic Park 3? And if not, I'd like to know why. Is it a yay or nay? But if you enjoyed this video today, be sure to smash that like button as hard as a dinosaur, as I like to say, and perhaps consider subscribing if you're new, because there's a lot more dinosaur content coming for you. And be sure to share this video with your dinosaur and monster-loving friends, so they can learn more about this mutant D-Rex as well, and we can grow this claymation community. Anyway, it's time for the build rundown on the Jurassic World Rebirth D-Rex skeleton. So the first order of business today was getting that base frame done, which required a large aluminum wire for both the neck, torso, and tail. Then I used some tin foil to basically help us save on oven-baked clay, which happens to be what the bones are made out of, you could say. But there was also some extra aluminum wire used along the way, just for a bit of extra support on those limbs, you could say. Basically, over the years of, well, creating these monsters and dinosaurs, I've learned that adding a little bit more aluminum wire between the joints makes a big difference in your overall doll's strength and capability to move around. Basically, over time, unfortunately, those oven-baked bones will kind of start crumbling, mainly because of the pinch point of the joint, so I find adding an extra piece of aluminum wire in with the bones makes a big difference. Basically, the joint will only bend there, not at, well, the leg where you don't want it to bend, obviously. Then once all the limbs were made, I used a little bit of plasticine clay to help them stay. Then we moved on to the skull fabrication, you could say, where it was mostly just oven-baked clay and painting today. But there's a lot more work on the way, so stay tuned for part 2 where we'll be adding the first layer of plasticine clay. Hello everyone, my name is Evan and I like to make stop-motion dinosaurs and monsters, and in this YouTube video today, I'm happy to say we'll be sculpting the D-Rex today. And along the way, we'll be discussing whether or not this is the most dangerous monster in the franchise, I say.
Yeah, so I tried putting the Lego block, but it didn't fit. Oh, did you try wiggling around it? Oh, I did not do it. Oh, I guess so, eh? Oh, what the heck is that about?
Oh, not my legs, my beautiful legs.
Now, as we make the Mutant Jurassic World D-Rex today, the topic of the day is whether or not this is the most powerful beast in the Jurassic World franchise today, I do say. Jurassic World Rebirth is introducing one of the strangest creatures the franchise has ever seen to this day. The mutant dinosaur that is dubbed as the D-Rex, aka the Doomsday Rex. Now, this guy has definitely caused a bit of controversy online, splitting the fandom into two halves. Some are absolutely loving the design, and well, others not so much. And for me personally, I think it's cool, but I don't think it belongs in the Jurassic World franchise. Mainly because of its resemblance to, well, a Muto and various other movie monsters that obviously have nothing to do with this franchise. I've even gotten messages from people who didn't know that the D-Rex was actually part of the Jurassic World. They thought it was basically a Cloverfield monster, which I can't say I blame them. Now, however, I should mention I do really like the premise or the idea that it comes from a failed specimen. While it can be minorly canon breaking, since that we know that all failures of dinosaurs were allegedly destroyed, to avoid exactly what the D-Rex is. It is still a very cool story to explore nonetheless, so it's not exactly a major recon, just a minor one. This is a dinosaur that has been lost to time, but created by fragments of the future, only to be left behind and tortured for eternity, until its death. And when you put it like that, well, that sounds pretty epic. So I'm really interested to see what they exactly do with this creature. But by judging what we know so far, I would imagine there's only a handful of people that have noticed what I have noticed about this mutant. Leading us to the question whether or not this is the most dangerous dinosaur of all the Jurassic franchise. And well, that's exactly what we're going to be speculating about in today's video. So I'll try to explain this to the best of my abilities. And if you want more informative Jurassic and or Kaiju Godzilla content here on YouTube, well, I do exactly that. For example, would you like to find out more about this dinosaur's lore? Be sure to check out part 1 of the Jurassic World D-Rex project. And or any of my other dinosaur videos where I tend to, well, stick to the more scientific side of things. But obviously for the Jurassic franchise here, we do have to make some minor exceptions. But either way, I'm happy to say once this project is done, I say, there will be plenty more dinosaur content heading your way. Basically, anything dinosaur or monster related, I got you covered, so be sure to subscribe to the channel today, I do say. Anyway, that's enough of my e-begging for now, so let's discuss whether or not this is the most dangerous dinosaur of the Jurassic franchise. So throughout the trailer of Jurassic World Rebirth, we can undeniably say this mutant dinosaur was definitely the most questionable part about it, but probably one of the most hyped up parts of the trailer as well. Whilst there really wasn't necessarily a big lead up at the end of the trailer, like there was with the Spinosaurus and the Mosasaurus, but the most dangerous aspects of this trailer pretty much came from the D-Rex itself. It looks big and it's obviously carnivorous, and you can even see the complete fear from the characters. When the D-Rex first enters the frame with its claw, we can see John Bailey's character shaking his leg in absolute fear. We can also see when the D-Rex is locked up in the cryo chamber, someone is desperately trying to get out because he pretty much knows he's going to die. But not only that, we see the fear in Duncan's face, going face to face with this dinosaur, via some very short brief images obviously. But pair that all up with the fact that this creature is often being shown in a red mist throughout the trailer, just adds even more to the fear aspect. We see it in the red cryo chamber, we see it in the red flare, and you can even see it through the mist of the smoke as well. So they really tried their best to showcase this dinosaur in an aspect for the viewers to be like, whoa, this guy is very dangerous. And what on earth is this thing? So whilst there wasn't really a big lead up to the end of the trailer, I do believe it was the most hyped dinosaur in the trailer itself, and they did this on purpose because I just know throughout the movie we are all going to start correlating the D-Rex with the color red, judging by what we saw in the trailer, which I'm sure you all know what red refers to: blood, death, danger, all that types of stuff. So the fact that it looks ginormous, the fact that it's carnivorous, and not to mention the fear that we see distilled in the characters, and the fact that we see it correlated with the color red, it really makes me think whether or not this dinosaur is going to be dangerous. And judging by the outside perspective and the sounds of it, you're more than likely to automatically say, well, yes, the mutant D-Rex is going to be very, very dangerous. But is it really dangerous? Just a couple hours after the trailer, I had this thought to myself about the D-Rex, and I was kind of waiting to see if anybody else had the same idea. Now, it actually took about a week before I started seeing a handful of people say the same thing that I'm thinking. And they started with the question whether or not this D-Rex was going to actually be dangerous. Because I think it's safe to say that 95% of people out there undoubtedly would say that the D-Rex is dangerous. But the other 95%, well, I'm within that percentage. And only a handful of people have been questioning whether or not the D-Rex is actually going to be dangerous. So let's try to break this down. So when we think about the creature, what exactly is it? Well, it's a genetic failure. That alone should be enough for you to start sympathizing with this dinosaur. We know that every dinosaur in the franchise, other than the Scorpius Rex, they generally pretty much came out perfectly, exactly how the scientists wanted. Maybe Bumpy was asymmetrical, and maybe the Spinoceratops did look like a bit of an abomination, but pretty much all the dinosaurs that we did get to see on screen came out perfect or almost perfect to the actual intentions behind the scientists creating the dinosaur. But this mutant dinosaur, the D-Rex, we know it was sculpted after the xenomorph in Aliens, and also the Rancor from Star Wars. But it was also mentioned that it was themed from the Tyrannosaurus Rex from the Jurassic, aka Cretaceous. Of course, this being a Jurassic movie. So it's safe to say that this is a genetical failure of the Tyrannosaurus Rex, which automatically, if you think about it, and you do a bit of a deep dive into it, it's honestly kinda heartbreaking when you think about it because it's not really supposed to be alive. And to be honest, most genetical failures don't make it past infancy. So the fact that it could be possibly nearly 50 years old kinda makes you think, well, wow, actually maybe this guy isn't going to be much of a threat. It's gonna have a lot of deformities and it's just not natural. And as I said before, the odds of this thing actually being alive are very slim. Most genetical failures, again, do not go past infancy. And of course, we also know about the morality rule, which requires these dinosaurs to be destroyed if they are a genetical failure. So I think it's safe to say that this creature probably shouldn't be alive. And well, obviously it is, so it's probably clearly struggling to stay alive. Throughout the trailer, as we try to identify its features and what it does, and God, identifying this thing has not been easy. But either way, with what we were able to see, you can tell that it's not going to be a very fast-moving creature. It takes an age to move even towards Duncan in the trailer. And you can also see how slowly the claw lands on the pontoon in the trailer. So I think it's safe to say that this creature is obviously very slow-moving. It's not bipedal like a Velociraptor or a Tyrannosaurus Rex. It's a massive quadruped, so from what we know about massive quadrupeds, especially on the sauropod region things, they don't entirely move very fast. Unless you're probably a Hadrosaurus or a Ceratopsian. So the fact that it is slow-moving, we can then pair it up with the fact that it doesn't really have a practical design for killing. And in all honesty, if you just take one good look at it, the way that it would kill and or hunt really just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Now, not only that, we can also see how bulky this creature is, adding to the fact that it is just not agile. It's by no means going to be running around and changing directions very quickly, like a Velociraptor can. I mean, sure, yes, it does have these really long and big arms, but at the end of the day, the design is just not practical for hunting and or killing. So this creature is most likely going to be a scavenger or opportunistic hunter. And again, I just don't really personally understand how it would survive 50 years to begin with. It's clearly a very old creature. So when we all get to finally see it in Jurassic World Rebirth, it's more than likely going to be past its prime in hunting years. So when we pair all of this together, the fact that it's a genetical failure, it shouldn't be alive, and it's nearly 50 years old. It's very slow moving, it's bulky and not agile, and it just doesn't have a practical design for killing. So overall, I do believe it's not as dangerous as they are portraying. I'm sure it will have its moments like snapping up somebody and or throwing them around or perhaps even treading on somebody. But just based off everything that we do know, it doesn't really come across too dangerous in my opinion. It's kinda just there existing. You know what I mean. So while it was portrayed as a big danger or threat in the trailer, I strongly disagree that it's going to be anything as such in the movie. It just does not have the right features or compatibility to be maybe even as terrifying as the skull crawlers from the Monsterverse, for example, and honestly, those guys are really cool, and definitely one of my favorites in that movie. I mean, sure, maybe it does have some potential to be like those, but the D-Rex mobility really lets it down in this department. So yeah, my conclusion is that I honestly don't think it's going to be the most dangerous, well, dinosaur and or monster in the Jurassic World franchise. And I honestly don't think it's going to be anywhere near it. And I personally believe that those titles belong to either the Indominus Rex or the Scorpius Rex. And of course, the queen of the dinosaurs, Rexy, aka Roberta. Because I'm gonna be honest, I feel pretty confident that I could probably outrun the D-Rex in comparison to any of those other creatures. So that concludes our synopsis today on the D-Rex, I say. So let me know what you think in the comments below today. Is this dinosaur going to be a massive threat, or is it going to be a monstrous wreck? But either way, if you enjoyed this video today, be sure to smash that like button as hard as a dinosaur, I do say. And be sure to subscribe today so you don't miss any of the new dinosaur content that'll be stomping your way. But anyway, it's time for the build rundown, I say. So on our Claymation D-Rex project today, we added, well, the first and second layer of plasticine clay, making this mutant more than just a skeleton, you could say. And I just have to say that this thing is looking rather monstrous today. But with the first layer of plasticine clay, we got the foundation of our D-Rex, you could say. Then with the second layer of clay, it was adding layers of muscle, I say, making this dinosaur look far more menacing and threatening, I do say. We also made some oven-baked claws today, but unfortunately one could say we had to make a correction along that way by removing one of the D-Rex's fingers today, because I made the mistake of adding 3 where only 2 should be. But now that a good chunk of this sculpture is done, the next part of this project that'll be on the way is the details, I say, where in part 3 this monstrosity will be released on the Lego City. So be sure you have your post notifications turned on today so you don't miss the details of the D-Rex coming your way. And for this last part of the video today, I have a special shout out for someone, I say. So be sure to check out SMG16 Studios 45 today, I do say. And before this video ends today, I just want to say that I truly appreciate each and every one of you, and you're the reason I keep working so hard and all these different dinosaurs and monsters. So I hope you have a great day. Hello everyone, my name is Evan and I like to make stop motion dinosaurs and monsters. And during this video today, I'm proud to say we'll be finishing off the Jurassic World Rebirth T-Rex today. Now, as I make the finishing touches today on the D-Rex, I say, we'll be diving into the origin story today of this mutant monstrosity, I do say. So there's several new mysterious dinosaurs that have got a lot of people confused about the Jurassic lore and the appearance as a whole. One such example is the infamous mutant T-Rex, which, yes, don't worry, I will be talking about later on in this video. However, there is another mutant that seems to be completely missed and even locked out entirely, even though it could be one of the most important pieces of Jurassic World or Park media since the franchise has began. You see, there's a lot of confusion already about which island we're exactly going back to. See part 1 for more details. But some people believe it's the original Isla Sorna, because, well, I'm sure you know that that's where they made the dinosaurs before shipping them off to Jurassic Park. And then some others believe that it's just off the coast of Barbados. Now for the debate of which one is true. Well, first off, immediately in the trailer, they do mention they are going past Barbados, which is the complete opposite side of South America, whereas the original Jurassic Park was on the left-hand side, or the west side, not too far from Costa Rica. But this new island is supposedly on the right part of South America, or the east side by the Bahamas. But immediately, if that was the case, we are starting to get dangerously close to the Bermuda Triangle. So that kind of leads us to question, how exactly are you going to transport these dinosaurs from this island, which is on the right-hand side of South America, all the way to the other side? Now, if I'm going to be blunt, that personally doesn't make a whole lot of sense at all. And not only that, I haven't even spoken about the mutant dinosaurs yet. So I just kind of want to clear up this island fiasco first. Now, I personally immediately believe that this isn't one of the original islands. It's not Isla Sorna, it's not Isla Nublar, it's not any of the islands in the 5 Deaths. It's not exactly a Site C, so to speak. I believe it's a new island on the right-hand side of South America, which, yes, I do believe it was possibly owned by InGen at some point. And that's the key word here, at some point. Now, I believe that the base or the bases of the original lab was there prior to Jurassic Park, so prior to 1993, where essentially they conducted their research and then just abandoned it. Well, you might be thinking, well, Moose, what about these mutant dinosaurs? They're still there. There's dinosaurs on the island, which is, yes, correct. And I will 100% cover the D-Rex and the two-headed raptor, how they fit into the Jurassic Park lore and the Jurassic World lore. Now, I know you might be thinking, does that really make a difference? And well, yes, it does. If you're a hard-seasoned Jurassic fan like me, it makes all the difference. We can't exactly just go retcon on this stuff. And that's what we're going to solve today, these mutant dinosaurs. Were they InGen's or were they another company entirely? AKA Parkergenics. Now, you might be asking, what is Parkergenics exactly? Now, funnily enough, I do believe it's the actual company who went back to this island, the original InGen facility, took it over, and then started conducting their own greedy corporate research. Now, I'm sure some of you are aware that this Parkergenics has been seen on some merchandise which has come to light in the last month or so at Universal Studios in Florida. Now, not only that, this Parkergenics, this company, seems to be the one financing all the equipment for Scarlett and her team. Because if you go watch the trailer and pause on the gun, you can look closely and see a PG logo, which looks suspiciously exactly like, well, the Parkergenics logo. So I'm sure you all know the synopsis of the plot, where they have to go and get 3 samples of the world's largest dinosaurs to cure some type of disease. Now, I might talk about the disease in the near future here, but I don't want to give too much away, you could say. So I'll briefly just say, is it the DX virus? Well, probably not. It's more than likely some disease that we already know, perhaps maybe like cancer. But they do have to go back to this original island, as they say, where they say these dinosaurs were too dangerous for Jurassic Park. Now, there are several problems with this, because immediately on the island we see live specimens of dinosaurs, which look nearly identical to the original versions of Jurassic Park and Jurassic World. They are clearly not too dangerous for Jurassic Park or World because they had them on display. Because we both see a T-Rex and a Dilophosaurus. Granted, the Dilophosaurus was technically never on display but was intended to be in Jurassic Park and Jurassic World. And we also see a Velociraptor claw. And I'll be coming back to that later because I believe the claw isn't a regular Velociraptor claw. But getting back on track, these are clearly not the dinosaurs too dangerous for Jurassic Park. So then why did they just leave them there? Because they are more than likely bred by a different company. So not InGen or Masrani Global. Because let's face it, if they were bred for the original Jurassic Park, opened up in 1993, these dinosaurs or creatures would be 50 plus years old. So one could say that puzzle piece isn't exactly fitting just right. And not only that, if you take a look at Ms. Ronnie's backdoor in the timeline, that the first test results for the embryos was in 1984 in Japan, Tokyo, conducted by InGen. So they were not on some type of well, fantastic new island off Barbados, because here's what's happening really in the lore. The guy that hires Scarlett and the rest of her team is obviously the owner or co-owner of some sort of this Parkergenics, a rival company to Biogen and InGen potentially. And he wants them to go back to this island because it was owned after InGen by Parkergenics. They went to set up their base in the abandoned InGen facility, aka the first facility, and started conducting their own genetic research way after Jurassic Park, because this would explain why the technology is way more advanced than anything we've seen in this world so far. You see, InGen probably did own this island off the coast of the Bahamas for basic research, conducted it, and then left. That would easily explain the very rustic parts in the trailer. Then Parkergenics commandeers the island after the fall of Jurassic Park, or perhaps even World after 2015. Who's to say that Parkergenics isn't another one of those greedy corporations, where essentially they set up their lab in the old lab, then start conducting research or biological weapons, hence making this mutant dinosaur that goes, well, obviously horribly wrong. So they decide to abandon this island with this rampaging mutant, along with other dinosaurs and various other mutants. And well, you can't just exactly leave billions of dollars worth of assets there. No, so that means, well, they're gonna have to go back and get them, under the guise of collecting DNA from the dinosaurs to allegedly cure some type of disease. That way, the company wouldn't have lost their valuable research by abandoning it. They were able to retrieve that DNA and continue their greedy corporate activities conducted elsewhere, and that's where the D-Rex comes comes into play, with their experimentations with their dinosaurs potentially already on that island, which would explain the seemingly normal T-Rex and Dilophosauruses, and why they are on that island exactly to begin with. Perhaps they were even made by this Parker Inject's company. So that brings us to the next topic, the two-headed raptor. Now, my immediate first thought was that this is giving me Alien Resurrection vibes, specifically in the scene where Ripley goes to see past clones of herself, where she is clone number 8, and she sees clones 1 to 7, the failed attempts, essentially. So I have a hunch feeling that this is basically the case with the Velociraptor here, where basically InGen is trying to perfect the Velociraptor genome. I mean, right, that does make sense, but in actual fact, unfortunately, it doesn't. Because they tried that on Isla Sorna, that's what that entire island was about. Because we see all the Velociraptors in the tubes there. This is something entirely different, and not only that, this test tube isn't old, it's not all decrepit. It doesn't exactly look like it's been there for 30 to 40 years, like the ones we see in Jurassic Park 3. Because if you compare the two, one is obviously, well, basically nature is taken over and the other one is fairly clean, which is suspicious. Now, to be honest, the two-headed raptor one almost looks like it's brand new, whereas the ones there in Jurassic Park 3 have been sitting there since the start of Jurassic Park. So let's say approximately 1990. Then Jurassic Park 3 comes out in 2003. That means they would have been sitting there for about 12 to 13 years maximum. And there's already that level of decay, so it seems a little odd that they're trying to tell us that these test tubes with the two-headed raptor have also been here since 1993. So those things have been sitting there for nearly 30 to 40 years, and there's basically no decay and they look all brand new. So you can see why things aren't quite adding up correctly here. That's because this raptor, or this mutant dinosaur, was not created by InGen, and they were never destined for the park. Well, I personally don't think this is something left behind. This is something brand new. I think this is something that was potentially created by Parker Gen X. And I'm also a firm believer, at least I hope, that we're going to see this two-headed raptor. When you look in the kitchen scene in the trailer, you can see the raptor claws slowly coming down, but something looks different. They don't look identical to the ones that we see in Jurassic Park 3. Now, don't get me wrong, I absolutely love the raptors, and I do believe they are a very important staple for the franchise, very much like the T-Rex. But I would very much love to see this two-headed raptor in action, even if it's just for a split second or two, because seeing how the claws do look slightly different in the trailer, this potentially could be the two-headed raptor. Now, I think it's pretty obvious that they're not going to reveal everything in the trailer. I mean, realistically, they're going to be leaving in a shock or two, right? I'd also like to say the company that has commandeered the island and brought all these new facilities online are clearly developing genetic technology by A, cloning the dinosaurs, and B, trying to make mutant versions of them, essentially being biological weapons of some sort to sell to the highest bidder. Now, that has been a theme throughout the Jurassic Park novels and the Jurassic Park franchise. It's essentially the core principle. Mankind essentially wielding technology that they cannot control, which also sums everything up for all these mutants. It started with Dodson bribing Dennis Nedry to get the embryos, which then turns into a greedy corporation, where they then start to militarize the dinosaurs, where they then sell them off to the highest bidder. In Dominion, Lewis Dodson returns, basically just trying to do the same thing, essentially capitalizing on DNA technology, with locusts eating crops and them being the only ones who can stop the locusts. Now, fast forward once again a couple of years, now we have this Parker Gen X trying to harness the power of genetic technology. Just like Ian Malcolm said, it's like a kid who has found their father's gun. It did not require any discipline to obtain this technology, and therefore they have no responsibility for it. Now, the main question here is, did they intentionally create a two-headed raptor? Did they intentionally create that D-Rex? I mean, they did keep it in containment for long enough. I mean, it wasn't exactly a failed experiment, so why exactly would they have been keeping it alive in this pen? Wouldn't they have just put it in a tube like they did with the Velociraptor potentially? Something is definitely off about this mutant dinosaur. We can say it was them trying to fill in the gene sequence gaps, like InGen did with the frog DNA, but once again, that doesn't exactly fit with the story that I'm building here, because this isn't InGen, it's Parker Gen X. Now, I'm not saying this is entirely out of the question, that InGen couldn't have gone back to this island, you know, just before Jurassic World, so basically the early 2000s, and conducted their research there creating this mutant dinosaur. It could have been the first attempt at a hybrid maybe, prior to Scorpius Rex, but that would be the only explanation though, because they couldn't have been trying to perfect the genome, because they already had the genomes from 1993. I mean, there was literally already living specimens out there in the wild essentially, so they could literally just take that DNA, so that's what they do. So if they did go back to this island with this new technology for the Jurassic World, it would have been for some type of hybridization, which would explain the new technology. And in all honesty, I think it's just a big cover story to say that this is a old facility. It's essentially just a lie for people to get them onto the island, unfortunately. because obviously all they want to really recover is the DNA from their experiments. And the reason that I'm saying this is because the facilities that we see in the trailer are not decayed and old decrepit facilities. Because if this was the first place that they created dinosaurs, nature would have clearly taken over at this point. And I proved this earlier on during the video, so this is something different. This is another greedy corporation. And that is the origin of the D-Rex and the two-headed raptor. They are not InGen's creations, but you know, that's just a theory. A film theory.
Hey, thanks for sticking around to the very end of the video. Be sure to leave a like if you enjoyed the content, comment below what you think, share with your friends, and perhaps consider subscribing if you're new. And I rate that's enough from me. Till next time, take it easy.